if in the event someone else wins this time round, will you run again the next round?
No.
I am very curious. Are you the Dragon Slayer?
The reason why I'm standing for president, maybe you can call me a dragon slayer, is because times in the future can be difficult.
Welcome back to Wise and Shine. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut.
And I'm Dawn, SG Budget Babe. Today we have a really special guest on set, and you guys will probably know him by now, so he doesn't really need an introduction, but we'll let him introduce himself.
I'm Ng Kok Song, presidential hopeful. I'm so delighted to be with Reggie and Dawn for Wise and Shine.
Yes.
You know, and I hope to shine.
Great.
So that's why I'm here at Wise and Shine.
Yes. Is it the best podcast in Singapore?
It will be.
I like that. Very, very well done.
After this episode, it will be, right?
It will be. Yeah. And I think like what Dawn said, right? You've gone on multiple media shows, you're everywhere already. You know, whatever that you said in the beginning, oh, nobody knows me. Now everybody knows you, right? But tell us something that maybe you have not shared elsewhere, right? Something about you, like that's unique.
People do not know that I cannot sleep without a bolster.
Oh, that's an interesting nugget.
Yeah. Okay.
It is like comfort, you know.
Yeah. I thought you would go into something like, what is your biggest bet in GIC or something like that.
That is professional talk.
Professional talk. Okay.
You were asking me something personal.
Okay. Cannot sleep without a bolster. Then what about professional? I think.
Wait, I got a follow-up question. So do you bring a bolster along when you travel then?
Very good question. I did. Once I was traveling on Singapore Airlines, and I packed my bolster into a little, bag, squished all together. And then I put it in the overhead cabin. And I was traveling with our finance minister at that time, Dr. Richard Hu, So halfway through the flight, I reached out and I took out my bolster. And he was aghast. Kok Song, you really do that? I said, yes, sir. I have a good night's sleep. I can hit the ground running.
I need my cho-cho, essentially. that's the idea.
To be fair, I also can't sleep without my bolster. I survive if I'm overseas. I never pack to travel, but then the sleep won't be as good lah.
Yes. So the bolster is Singapore's financial reserves.
Nice.
And yes, that is the question.
We sleep better with the bolster of our reserves.
You heard that.
Great. And that's the question, right? I mean, you as the Chief Investment Officer of GIC, in the finance sector, it is very cutthroat. The people that are at the top must be the best, right? Because it's a very clean type of evaluation metrics. You can make money now. You can make a lot of money. You can lead the investment team.
Yes.
So what is your best bet in GIC over the many years of service that you've done?
The best bet that I made was just before the global financial crisis, where I had to lead the investment team at the GIC. I had to work with our board of directors, which was then led by Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, but Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong was the deputy chairman. So in the run-up to the 2008 global financial crisis, there was so much exuberance in the markets. But there was so much financial leverage in the banking system, in the financial system. Everything seems to be going very, very well. So much so that I don't know whether you remember the CEO of Citibank, Chuck Prince, says that when the music is playing, you must continue to dance.
Okay.
Well, I and my management team took a different view, and we say no. From this point on, meaning in May 2007, the downside risk is so much greater than any upside potential. And so we began a process of persuading our board of directors to de-risk the GIC portfolio significantly. That was a very bold move because practically everywhere else there was a contrary opinion. And also there were people who were very experienced. Some of our advisors, our foreign advisors on the GIC investment committee, who says, no, the GIC is a long-term investor. We should not be timing the markets, going out, coming back. And so I had to make a persuasive case. I have to persuade our investment committee. Eventually, I had to go to the board of directors to say to them that it is my judgment, based on years of experience, that this is a very risky situation in global markets. To protect our reserves, we have to reduce the risk, which means that we have to cut back our exposure to basically equities.
Nice.
Right? So, but that was a difficult decision to make because eventually when the board agreed to do that, from May onwards until March 2008, the markets went higher until Bear Stearns collapsed.
Yes.
Then the markets began to crumble. And of course, in October 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed.
That's
and
it.
all hell broke loose.
How do you react at that point in time?
When all hell broke loose and Lehman collapsed, we bought back everything we sold. You see, that's a very major decision because it involves billions of dollars. And it was a very tricky operation because how do you try to sell at the top and how do you try to buy at the bottom? Impossible. So because we are such a large fund, we have to start early.
Yes.
We have to start early.
Yes.
And then average down, you know, the cost. So it was the most stressful time of my work at the GIC.
Interesting.
So once the global financial crisis was over, I said, it's time to retire.
What do you think was more difficult, convincing the board and everyone else to follow this contrarian move or executing the actual contrarian
Both
move?
were very difficult because I cannot execute unless I get the approval.
Of course.
Because we are talking about a major decision which requires the approval of the board. And as on any board, there are differences of opinion. You know? And in that situation, I had to, try to make the best judgment I can, present my opinions. And I cannot be cocksure about those things. Nobody knows for sure. All I know was the downside risk is so much greater than any upside potential. So the prudent thing to do is to reduce the risk and not be greedy. Not be greedy, you see? Because if you try to be greedy to catch another 10%, you might very well lose 50%. In a way, you can say that, the 30 years, 40 years before then was a preparation for that critical moment.
That was the big move.
Yes.
Yeah. So then, do you agree with time the market and timing the market? In the sense of like everybody says, oh, you should have time in the market and not timing the market. But that move is timing the market.
You see, timing the market is extraordinarily difficult. So in that particular period where we had to re-risk and then increase the risk, the moves were so big because the market fell almost 40%. The stock market fell 40%. Our timing was not perfect. But because the move was so big, you don't have to be perfect. All right?
Fair.
So I think in that particular instance, if I remember correctly, we were able to capture about 30%. You see? So don't make market timing decisions lightly. Do it rarely because it is not easy to execute. For people with personal finances, the prudent thing is to invest steadily so that you're not putting all your eggs into the market at one time. You steadily accumulate your savings and you try to capture the average. On average, the market will go up, maybe at a rate of about 6 to 8% per year. Try to capture that. But don't try to say, I want to sell at the top and buy at the bottom.
Unless you lead GIC lah.
Even there.
It's the expectation because I think institutional investors are expected to perform even in a bad market. There's no such thing as bad market. No, means not make money. You're gonna get out. Right. So it's a very different.
So those are very rare decisions that you should make.
Fair.
I'm just curious, making these decisions are not easy and it takes a lot of courage to go against the herd, to be contrarian. So given that you're exercising so much of that mental and emotional capacity at work to make these big decisions for the reserves for the country, how then do you try to balance it with your personal life? Are you of the option whereby, you know what, I'm doing so much of this at work, I'd rather just let my personal finances be taken care of, someone else to manage my investments, and I don't really care about capturing everything, but as long as it's something decent, that's good enough? Or are you of the mandate whereby, hey, I'm good at this, and I expend more mental and emotional capacity to also manage my own. Which
Yes.
camp are you in?
No, let me share with you something which is quite private, but I think it's an important point to make. See, because I was the chief investment officer of the GIC, and in certain markets, the GIC is a very powerful force, particularly in the Asian markets. So some of the things that the GIC does has the possibility of moving markets. All right? So one of my great concerns when I was at the GIC was that no investment officer at the GIC should be perceived to have a conflict of interest. That they take advantage of information, they take advantage of their position to benefit themselves personally. All right? Now, having said that, we cannot deny the people at the GIC the right to invest their savings.
Because they are professionals, right?
They are professionals, you see. So what we then did at the GIC was to put in place very clear rules and procedures. If you want to invest in something that the GIC is involved in, you must get prior approval. And then secondly, if you are involving yourself in some kind of investment that the GIC is doing at a particular time, you must go last. You cannot go in first and front run
Fair.
the GIC.
That means you open your position first before
Yes.
GIC comes in.
And then the other problem was that because the GIC is a major client to investment banks, to brokers, they all want to please you. They want to do you a favor. So they will say, well, can I allocate you a special IPO? If those things happen, it doesn't look good on the GIC, as Singapore's sovereign wealth fund. So I and the top management at the GIC were very careful to put in place all these rules to avoid any actual or perceived conflict of interest. And then for myself, I set a higher standard. I said I will not be involved, I will not invest in anything that the GIC invests in.
Fair.
Then what do I do with my money? I have my savings, I earn my salaries. All my savings went into Singapore dollar time deposits with banks. And from time to time, when there's a new condominium project, so I invest in some apartments to collect rental income. That's all I did.
Okay.
So you asked me a good question. Why can't? In fact, my wife asked me that. My new wife. She said, Kok Song, you spend so much time and effort.
And you're a professional. You're so
You're
good at it.
professional, helping to make money for the government. Isn't it about time you make some money for your family?
I love that wife, huh? Right, wife is great.
She is your board of director.
I said, no, darling, I cannot. To protect the integrity of the GIC, I had to set a higher standard for myself.
And you went to retirement, right? And then now you are coming back, right?
Yes.
Into the limelight and taking this whole thing as a president and all that. So I am very curious. Are you the Dragon Slayer? Okay, but let me provide everybody the context.
First.
Okay, I must be very clear. This one I quote. So in 2018, I think during the ministerial salary discussion, Mr. Tong came out and said this, and I quote from Straits Times. In times of prolonged crises and upheaval, I have no doubt that Singaporeans will step forward to serve. Money will not be a key vector, but in peace and prosperity, there are no dragons to slay. Personal aspirations, freedom, privacy, and lifestyle take precedence. So does it mean that now got dragon to slay and you are the dragon slayer? That's why you have put your name into the presidential race.
I think ESM Go had a really important analogy there. Now we live in seemingly peaceful times. Now we live at a time when things seem to be going okay in Singapore. But the reason why I'm standing for president, maybe you can call me a dragon slayer, is because times in the future can be difficult. It can be difficult as far as the external environment is concerned, and we might very well have a situation in the global economy which would affect the Singapore economy, such as the outbreak of war between China and the United States. That will be so destructive for the global economy, and it will hit our economy very badly. Maybe worse than the GFC, maybe worse than the pandemic. All right. So in order to prepare for those difficult times, the dragon must come up quick soon.
The dragon slayer must come.
For that. All right. And then secondly, I'm concerned that domestically, we've been so used to good government for 58 years since we became independent. But who knows? Things might change. And we may enter a period of time where the government may not be as good as it has been.
Question. Are you seeing signs? This cannot be fully a preemptive measure, right? There must be some concerns.
I think nations rise and they fall.
Okay.
Companies rise and they fall. All right. We mustn't assume that Singapore may not fall.
Fair, right? fair. So are you seeing signs that
I think we have to be very realistic and know that it's very difficult to sustain such a high standard of governance. I don't think it's going to happen soon. But what if one day we have a prime minister who is corrupt? Can you imagine the consequences for Singapore? You only have to look around our neighborhood. So that is the kind of domestic prospect that I'm worried about.
Fair.
Why now and not earlier or at a different time? What made you come out now?
The
dragon doesn't come out too early. It must come out at a timely moment. The dragon we are talking about here is the dragon of the president. Because if the prime minister is corrupt, if the government turns bad, at least we have the president as a delaying tactic.
Fair.
As a veto.
Fair.
In order to prevent it from happening suddenly and quickly. So in that sense, I do agree with Mr. Tong's analogy.
There's a dragon.
We need dragon slayers to come up now.
Yeah. Fair. Okay. So I think there's two tangents to that discussion. First is internal. Second is the externalities of the situation today, right? So let us address the internal one first. So I think Tan Kim Lian was saying something along the lines of like, if the government does not do policies that are aligned with him, if he becomes the president, he may not approve the budget. Right? And then you reacted to say that the government should have executive powers, right? And then the president should not participate in this decision making of the budgets, right? So So my question is then, at which point in time will you, if you are the president, actually take a different position from the government? That means you don't approve the budgets.
The president must be clear about what he can do and what he cannot do.
Yeah.
So the president does not make policies.
Yes.
The president has checked on two very specific things. And that is when the government wants to draw down on the past reserves. And when the government wants to make certain appointments in the public sector that the president disagrees with. Those are the two checks that the president has. The president should not make policies. But if policies are made, such as in the budget, which requires a draw on the reserves, such as when there's a deficit, then the president can ask the government, why are you drawing on the past reserves? What is it for? All right? So we must be very clear about that.
Yeah.
So the president cannot give guidance to the Minister for Finance. Please allocate so much. That is the government's job. So if we don't understand that, we're going to make a mess of things. The government cannot function.
Fair. And I'm not disputing that point. In fact, I agree with you. But the real question is, at what point, what parameters are you deciding, if you are the president today, that you say, okay, the government say, I want to draw down the reserves, and then Ng Kok Song say, cannot, right? So at what point, what is your parameter to decide?
Did you have a chance to watch the YouTube video of the Prime Minister?
The recent one, right? The CNA three-parter. Yes, I saw. Yes.
Did you?
Yeah, I saw. The three-part monologue. Even Prime Minister must come out do monologue.
It's not a monologue. It's a wonderful performance, in my opinion, by the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
But it took the Prime Minister no less to explain. So this matter of the reserves is not an easy matter.
It's true.
Right? So don't make light of it. Say, anyone can do it.
Yeah.
All right? It requires the Prime Minister to explain to the people of Singapore in 3 YouTube videos. When the government comes to the President, as Mr. President, I want to draw down $30 billion of reserves. The President has got to make a judgment call.
Yeah.
Why 30 billion?
Yeah.
All right? And of course, in order to make a judgment call, it's got to have an understanding of the global environment. What is the risk that we are facing? He's got to say, all right, how is it going to threaten the Singapore economy? You know, it's the same kind of judgment which I had to make during the global financial crisis.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to in a way, ask questions, ask the right questions, all right? And maybe challenge the assumptions, with the help of the Council of Presidential Advisors, So those are judgment calls which require some competence, all right? Some competence. You see, if you are performing heart surgery, a GP is not good enough.
Okay, so who's the GP in this election?
You draw your own conclusions.
At what point will it take you to disagree? So say if you were to become president,
yes,
and the government has a view that current situations, maybe the cost of living, difficulty in rolling out incremental GST increases, and they say we want to draw down from the reserves. But your view is that no, there are still other measures that we can try. There are ways that we can budget first instead of touching the reserve. At what point will you step forward to say, and if in that discussion, they do not agree with your view, so it's a very clear yes, no, opposite side.
Yes.
How far would you go to make your statement and opinion heard, not just by them, but by the masses, in order to protect the reserves?
Yes, there is an institutional provision for that in regard to how the president works. So if the president disagrees with the government, if he disagrees that the amount that they are asking to draw, says, no, you're drawing on too much. The president, with the advice from his council of advisors, can say no, veto the decision. Then what happens? The government has to go to parliament.
Take a
two-thirds majority, which is not easy to get. All right? So that is our safeguard.
Yeah. But provided they do actually get the two-thirds. So in this case, how much of a fight will you put up?
If they get the two-thirds majority, I think that day Singapore is doomed.
Okay.
The people of Singapore are asleep at that time.
Go through a very wild assumption, okay? In the event that they get two-thirds and you're still strongly against it, how far will you then go to protect and say no? Or are you just going to be, okay, fine, we got two-thirds.
I have a responsibility at that point to speak to the people of Singapore.
Okay, fair.
So you would then take that stand and address.
Fair.
And I think the international media will focus on it.
Yeah, because it's the president, right? So
yes.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair point. Yeah, so one of my friends just came just now. He was asking, hey, can you ask Kok Song, right? What about the presidential advisors, right? The committee of presidential advisors, right? So because now there's this whole advisory structure, within the presidential situation, or in the office of the presidency. So does the president truly have independence, or how is it going to work with the advisory committee? Maybe you can give us some color on that.
Well, I think the way things are set up at the moment, the constitutional provision for the elected presidency and the whole process, the procedures involving the Council of Presidential Advisors, and even the selection criteria as to who can stand for president. I think all these things need to evolve in the light of experience.
Okay.
What are the shortfalls? What are the limitations? How can we improve? So this kind of evolution is important. Just as in our system in the parliament, at one time it was just single seat constituencies. Then we put in GRCs in order to make sure that the minorities are adequately represented in parliament by having GRCs involving members of parliament from different races. See? And even after that, we say, not good enough. Nominated members of parliament. And then we went to a situation where opposition candidates, if they don't win, they can still be chosen, one of them. So you see, our parliamentary system of government has evolved over the years, right? In the light of experience, how to make it better. I think similarly, with the office of the elected president, we can make it better, you see? How do we make it better? Well, I think there's too much weight being put on the expertise of the president. It's necessary that the president should be competent, but it's a very heavy responsibility, And then you say you can fall back on the Council of Presidential Advisors. Yes, I think we've got people with the right experience and expertise, but we should always strengthen that. We should always strengthen that. So there are some suggestions that maybe, instead of all these powers, the custodial powers being vested in the president, maybe we should have an upper house of parliament, for example.
Some people talk about
So
it.
all these things, I think, is worth thinking
Exploring.
about.
What is something that would be particularly interesting for you to evolve the power of the presidency, specifically for you?
Well, I think it's very important that that there should be a group of financial experts who have the relevant expertise to help the president weigh the merits of drawing on the reserves and how much to draw down, And of course, now you have a situation where the president is obliged to consult the Council of Presidential Advisors, And of course, it will take a very bold president to override the Council of Presidential Advisors.
Do you foresee yourself being that bold president?
Are you that bold president?
Well, I need to have a lot of conviction.
Fair.
As I demonstrated when I worked at the GIC, I had to go against the traffic.
And you're independent in that sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Earlier on, you also talk about competency. What are some metrics of assessing the presidential candidates' competency that you think should evolve and change today versus what it always has been?
In the days gone by, in previous terms of the elected president, no dragon slayers.
Yeah, only the smile and shake hands.
So now we need dragon.
Okay.
With claws.
With claws.
Interesting.
Sharp claws, right?
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. So that is the internal element of the discussion, right?
Yes.
And you talk about externalities, right? Like what is out there, what is outside of Singapore. And I think, cat out of the bag, right? The biggest problem now is US-China. Right? So US-China dispute, I think there is consensus around this, that this is the biggest problem for Singapore to come in the next few decades, right? So if you are the president, you become the president of Singapore, how are you going to execute the power of the presidency to support or manage this US-China situation? Hey, I hope you're enjoying Wise and Shine so far. I'm your host Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and for us to continue to do this show so that you become a tad bit wiser every week, you gotta like, share, subscribe, help us beat the algorithm. But even more importantly, if you can, comment in the comment section below. Let us know your thoughts and also some questions that you would love us to answer. Yeah, now back to the show.
I doubt that President Xi Jinping or President Biden would consult me.
Maybe they will, right? For their funds or something.
No, but we need to have leaders. And I think we have the leaders who can make the assessment, all right, as to how serious the risk is and how imminent is the risk. And then how do we prepare Singapore for the, the collateral damage it will do to our economy if there is a hot war, right? That is a kind of an assessment, which not only, prime ministers have to make. The president must be aware of those things,
Yes.
Not that he can do much about it, all right? But he must be aware so that if a conflict does break out, the government comes to the president and say, I need to draw down on the past reserves to insulate our economy. Then the president can make a good assessment about that. And it's not an easy decision to make, because when the government comes to ask to draw down on the reserves, the government can ask for a small amount or a very big amount. How do you decide whether, of course, the president said smaller the better. But smaller may not be better.
Yes.
Because if it's too small, it won't work.
You underspend, you cause more problems.
Exactly.
Yes.
So when you have a crisis, it's better to act forcefully without having to come back again and again.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So these are judgments, right? There's no clear metrics,
Fair.
and only years of experience and understanding can help you to make those decisions wisely.
But prior to coming to that crisis point, would you, even though the president has very clear designated roles, but at the end of the day, as a main figurehead of Singapore as well, there are certain powers and influence that you can use to exert in that position. Would you do anything pre-crisis to prevent it from escalating? Or would you just leave that up to the government?
No, that is completely
Up to the government.
the government's work.
And
not
in the
the
event that you
president's.
feel the government falls short, will you then step in to maybe make an appearance?
Not step in.
Okay.
Not step in. But to the extent that the Prime Minister of the day, the Cabinet Ministers of the day would like to have some advice from the President, I will always be available.
Okay, fair.
And I will be able to offer them my views behind closed doors.
Right.
Fair. So in your view and in the current structure of how the powers are structured, essentially the president is not the head of state that will go out and do all the kind of shake hands, say hi, make friends type of situation.
No, the president has the
Has to do
important
that,
role.
right? Yeah.
Because the president carries with him the reputation of Singapore.
Exactly.
So you want to have a president who is respected not only in Singapore, but internationally.
Yeah.
You
fair.
see? And that is where I feel that my many years of work at the GIC has made me known internationally.
Fair.
Because, the GIC invests in 40 over countries around the world. And I have made so many business trips. I know ministers for finance. I even know former prime ministers. I know corporate CEOs.
Yeah.
So I feel that because of my work at the GIC, I'm quite well known internationally. And so let me give you an example of that. As you know, I had a very good friend with Mr. Ray Dalio. Have you heard of Ray Dalio?
Yeah,
Yes.
everyone in the finance community would know him.
Yeah. So because we are friends, so when I decided to contest for the presidency, I thought as a courtesy, I would let him know instead of him finding it out from the newspapers. So I spoke to Ray. I said, Ray, I just want to inform you that I'm standing for the presidency. So then he says, oh, who are you going to be running against? I said, also your friend, Taman, former finance minister, deputy prime minister. So he says, Singapore is so lucky to have the two best persons that I know running for the presidency. I thought that was a tribute to Singapore.
There is.
Isn't it?
I want to get clarity on that, right? Essentially, what you're saying is, yes, the president is the head of state. He represents the country. He represents the interests of the country. But because it is not the government, it should not decide the US-China policies in that sense. So in other words, the president acts against the long-term plan of the government and does not do independent trips on their own to change the position on their own.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think a very good way of describing the role of the president vis-a-vis the government. The president is the head of state. The prime minister is the head of government. My understanding is that the role of the president is to work with the government for the people of Singapore. Not to make trouble for the government, to support the government, to veto the government if necessary, but sparingly. But to work with the government for the people of Singapore.
Okay, fair. I like that clarity. I think that's very clear. Okay, so I think one of your good friends, Mr. George Yeo, gave you that, support you, right? Sign off. And you on another show did say that you didn't want the world to know. He was the one, George Yeo was the one that came out on his own to tell the world that he's endorsing you in that sense, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So what is that? Is that showing that he likes you more than Taman? Because he was, working with Taman, right? Mr. Taman, right?
No, we're so fortunate that we have many honorable, courageous Singaporeans who can understand what is in the interest of Singapore. So when I decided to stand for the presidency, because I have known George for many years, I wanted to go and share with him my decision. So I explained to George my reasons for wanting to stand. Number one, I want there to be an election. It cannot be a walkover. It will make a mockery out of elected presidency when there's no election. All right? I think for the dignity of the presidency, for the people of Singapore to feel happy that they had the right to choose was very important to me. Second reason, Singapore runs the danger. Not a sufficient number of good and capable people are coming forward to assume political leadership, even opposition leadership. We need more of such good people. And the danger is that increasingly it is more difficult to find such good and capable people. And all I'm doing, even at the age of 75, is to set an example. That if I am willing to come forward, why not you? All right?
Are there any people you have in mind? You don't have to name names,
No,
but
you
are there
have to
any
name names.
They are.
Are there any you have in mind that you think, I know this guy, he's so great for politics. Why is he not running?
Yes, I cannot reveal their names.
Oh, okay.
I've
See?
seen-
That's why I must say no
But
need
I
to
want
give
to see,
names.
ma, right?
And have you then told them,
Why not either of you?
Oh.
why not you?
Yeah, maybe one day.
I like my privacy.
One day
Yeah,
you will
that's
see
a
my face.
different
Yeah,
consideration.
so you know what sacrifice I'm making.
Yes.
You understand?
And your
So-
wife also spoke about it,
so
right? But you
anyway,
went
I
ahead.
explained to George Yeo the reasons why I'm standing. And I said, look, you know me. I've worked 45 years in helping to build up the reserves, build up the GIC. I don't want the reserves to be squandered. I have a personal reason.
So
why
you
I
view
want to
this
do
as protecting your baby in that sense?
Yes. Yes. So I explained to George and I say, well, George, if you can help me in some way, I'll be very grateful. And George thought about it for quite some time. He says, Kok Song, I'm also a friend of Taman. We were fellow cabinet ministers. But he says, but I admire what you're doing. And so I think I can be your character reference. And then he said, I think this is reported in the papers yesterday. And he said, if Taman asks me, why are you a character reference? Then he says, I will tell Taman, if you ask me to be your character reference, I will also do it.
Yeah.
I think that is honorable. And that is courageous.
Fair.
He could easily like, Kok Song, please. Difficult.
Difficult.
I like you, but.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair.
So I'm so grateful to George. He was a true, loyal Singaporean, right? Who believed in the best interests of Singapore.
Yeah. And I like that George is our spare tire. That's what he said. Hey, for a spare tire, guy is quite good, right? Yeah. At least that's how I look at it.
I think when you decided to run, there was no, or maybe it was insider information, but at that point it wasn't known that Taman would be running as well. So did you feel any change in your emotions when that news broke? When he announced that
on
he
the
was...
On the contrary, it was when Taman said that he was running and that he would like to be elected and not a walkover. That he wanted to be elected so that he can say he has a mandate from the people of Singapore. That was the moment when I asked myself the question, Kok Song, why not you?
So that was the moment which cemented your decision.
Yes.
So it wasn't a case of you already decided, but you hadn't yet announced. It was that moment that said, I should stop thinking about it. I should just go ahead and do it.
That's right. I mean, I had been thinking about it for 2 or 3 months. You know, I was tossing this thing in my head, you know. It wasn't an easy decision to make, you know, and I wanted to think about it very, very carefully. But when Taman spoke about his desire to be elected, so I thought I could make a contribution.
Okay. A worthy competitor, right? I think that's the idea. Okay, fair. And you went on our great friend's show, Teh Tarik with Walid, right? To talk about the migrant worker thing, right? And I mean, it wasn't you that brought it up, right? But they talk about it and it went viral, right? So about the lorry thing. Yeah. So I want to ask you, like, if you are the president, or, you know, even if you're not the president, I think by now you've accumulated some fame. You know, people know you. You're a reputable person in that sense, right? What are some causes locally that you will champion and support? You know, whether is it like, you know, shake hand, put your name on, you know, all those, which is important, right? The power of the president as a head of state to champion certain causes that are local. You know, what would be some of these things that is on your platform?
You see, the president, the life of the president, his life history is a story of what he stood for, of his values. And therefore, the president brings to his office those values. The reason why I was so worked up about migrant workers on the lorry, I think that is ghastly, you know. That is horrible. Because you wouldn't put your grandchildren on a lorry to go to school.
Fair.
Right? So I said, what sort of Singaporeans are we? We want to be known as a kinder society, as a caring society. And you do this to workers who sweat under the sun to help us to build Singapore. Our mass rapid transit system, could it have been built without the migrant workers? No chance. So instead of being grateful, we ill-treat them. So as someone who grew up poor, I understand that. And so Singapore should not just become a richer society. We must be rich in heart.
So based on that train of thought, are there certain other things that...
So I've been speaking about the 3 things that I would like to do, and that is for our younger generation. It's very important that our younger generation move into the future with emotional resilience, with self-confidence, and with an understanding, a sufficient understanding of finance to learn to save money. So those are not rocket science, but these are life skills that we can equip our children and our grandchildren with. We should try to maybe build some of this into our education system so that the emphasis is not just on academic excellence, professional excellence, but life skills, life skills of, finding inner peace, emotional resilience through meditation, developing self-confidence, to be able to communicate effectively, because that's required for leadership positions, and to be able to communicate your ideas. And then finally, to learn to save money, even if it's just a small amount. But saving money gives you freedom, right? So that you can have more choices. And it also helps to build up your savings for financial security. And if you want to go into business, you can say to your backers, I'm putting my life savings down. I have skin in the game. So all these things are very important, and I would like to champion this by just saying, if I see role models out there like you, I will invite you for tea at Istana and let you share. So the president has a stage that he can offer to people who he believes can improve our society.
Great. I like that. I will be on the stage.
I think I'll go on first. I've been around longer than you.
Fair.
Okay, together.
No problems here. We're united.
Wise and shine together. I have a question. So you have outlined your plans if you were to get that stage. Now, on the off chance, on the sad chance that you don't get that stage, but you would still be left with a platform for change. What would be your biggest moves, or what will you do with that platform now that so many people are watching you and you have the power to move and influence people?
Yeah, you cannot say, I'm going to become the president, so that's why I'm doing all the things.
Yeah.
That's not authentic.
Okay.
But the 3 things that I'm talking about, I've been doing all the while. So I've been teaching meditation to ordinary people. They come to a weekly meditation class that I conduct. I've been teaching university students about meditation, and I've been sharing this at business forums all around the world. And I want to continue to do that because I believe that is good for not only Singaporeans, but for humanity. If we want to have a peaceful world, let there be peace on earth, but let it begin with me. All right? So something which I want to continue doing until the end of my life. All right.
So when we talk about change, right? Typically there is the raise awareness so that people start to learn about it, and then that starts to plant the seed of change. Then the second stage would be people acknowledging that yes, I need to do something, or yes, now I'm aware, I do recognize this gap, and I want to do something. And the last stage then is actually taken actionable action to move things into place. With your platform that you will walk away with, regardless of what happens on 1st of September, at which stage of this change process do you see yourself playing the biggest influence? Are you going to be more on I'll keep using my platform to keep raising awareness to the causes that I believe in and contribute in my ways?
I'm already on the way. In all those 3 areas. For 35 years, I've been practicing meditation, and I've been sharing it and teaching it. And one example of it was the fantastic honor that Mr. Lee Kuan Yew gave me when he gave me the opportunity to help him to meditate.
Wow.
And then secondly, public speaking. The 3 of us are examples of how we can develop a skill in public speaking so that we're able to communicate, share our ideas better with other people. Financial literacy. I set up a vendor after I retired from the GIC because I want my company to be able to offer a low-cost, long-term investment product for Singaporeans. I'm on the way.
Yeah, that one we can get you on another show and we can talk about that specifically.
So you would continue doing all 3 even regardless of what the results would be. Would you foresee that if you were to get busier in the event that you get elected, then for the time being, these three may have to take a few steps backwards, or do you intend to maintain both sides?
No, you can only do something in a sustainable way
Fair.
if you have people to continue the work. So the mentoring becomes very important. It mustn't be totally reliant on me. So in all those three areas, I must be able to mobilize other people who share my vision.
Fair.
You know, it's like you all for financial literacy.
Yeah. Fair. Okay, so I want to ask more about financial literacy since we're on the topic, right? Okay, so most of our listeners are middle income millennials.
Yes.
They maybe have a kid or two. Probably half of them have a house, somewhere in that professional landscape. So we are in like CBD, likelihood they're all around, right? So that is our main target audience,
Yes.
right? So for people in that context, what is something that you see a lot of people doing that you think is wrong? They shouldn't do those things when it comes to personal finance. And what is something that you think, you should do more of?
Here we are talking about the basic principles of prudent investing. And those principles are equally applicable to the way the GIC invests the national reserves, as well as to personal finances. So what are those principles? The first principle is have as long-term an investment horizon as possible. So for a young person starting out at 25 years old and assuming you retire at 65, you have a 40-year investment horizon. And that is a very powerful factor. Very powerful factor because of compounding of returns, right? You know the rule of 72?
Yeah.
Rule of 72 says if you just make 4% per year, in 18 years, you double your money. If you make 8% per year, in 9 years, you double your money. So long term is very, very important. The longer your investment horizon, the better. The GIC invests with a 20-year time horizon. Okay. Second principle, which is to know what is your risk capacity. Don't invest your money in stocks for the long term if you need the money to pay for your mortgage. All right? So know your risk capacity. But once you know your risk capacity, set aside the money, put it on bank deposit if you have got to make those payments. But the extra, try to invest as long-term as possible. So knowing your risk capacity is very, very important. The third principle is to have a realistic return expectation. If you're investing in the stock market, I think a good rate of return is between 6 to 8% per year. Don't expect to make 12%. That is exceptional. When you make 12%, say, that's too high, it will come down. So 6 to 8 realistic return expectations. Fourth principle, diversify. What do I mean? If you want to invest in stocks, don't put everything into the Chinese stock market. Neither should you put everything in the American stock market just because it's doing well. So maybe one third. One third in America, maybe you want a bit more, it's okay. One third maybe in Japan, one third in China. Diversify, right? Because these things go up and down. And then the fifth principle, low cost. If you want to invest in complex things, the transaction costs are very high.
Yeah, it's true.
And you have to trade them. Go in, go out. You're only enriching the brokers. Right? So I think if you can keep it simple, invest in index funds. All right? The cost is low, maybe 0.1, 0.2% per year. If you're making 6% per year, why give up 1 or 2% in transaction costs? So these are very simple principles that you should try to adhere to. And all this in the context of steady investing. Put aside some money every month if possible. Even when you are young, you're making $2,000, try to save $100 if possible. But every month you invest, stay. Don't try to time the market. Wait. No. Just steadily invest. So I think those are the basic principles.
Yeah. Time the market is only for professional dragon slayers.
Professional dragon slayers.
Very difficult to do.
Very difficult for the mass, right? For the mass.
Do you find that in recent years, because of the prevalence of social media, and typically what goes viral is the person or the guru who says, I made X X% returns, and you can too. If I can do it, so can you. Right?
For every one person who achieves that, there are 99 who loses money.
But I guess like with social media clouding that, like before social media became so rampant and literally delivered in your phone to everybody, people would look at, for example, great investors like Ray Dalio and Warren Buffett, and they'll be like, they're the pinnacle, they're the top. So I understand there are other people who lose. I need to be a bit more moderate. I need to accept and know where I stand. But with social media and people saying like, if I can do it, so can you. I am normal. I came from this. I have no financial background. You can do it too. Do you feel that this has really skewed the way people view and invest in terms of the emotional and risk that they take?
Of course, the biggest psychological problem for investing, greed and fear.
And that do you feel that has been exploding because of social media?
Yeah, and I mean, you quoted Warren Buffett. His mate is Charlie Munger, and he says, if you think investing is easy, then you are stupid.
Charlie Munger has a lot of those lines.
No. I mean, you have to think deeply, because what he's saying is very true. It's very true. Born out of years of experience, and if you are an ordinary person with no experience, realize that when you are investing in the markets, you are competing against the professionals. Is that you're playing with a golf game. You're playing with people with zero handicap. And if you are handicap of 18, it's not easy. Even with a handicap of 18, you will be beaten. It is not easy.
Yeah, I heard you're a big fan. What's your handicap?
I play to a handicap of 18.
Which apparently is a thing. It's like a standard. There's a certain standard there.
No, 18 is a standard, because if you have a high handicap, you're wasting people's time on the golf course.
Yeah.
But if you have a handicap of 0, you're playing too much golf. You're not working hard enough.
Ask a little bit more. Earlier on, you mentioned 5 really great points. And guys, you guys should listen. This is GIC's head who made GIC to where it is today, saying and giving that advice. But out of your 5th one, you talk about low cost. Yes. Today, in this current climate, we have a lot of people, and with social media ads as well, right? Even insurance companies, insurance agents, they're advocating, and we all know that costs of investing through insurance and through the policies, because the many layers that they build are very high.
Yes.
But people are drawn to it because they like the idea that I don't have to do anything. Then I just go and work. I do something else. I'm lazy. I just want to outsource it. Do you feel that is the right way, given the high costs?
A lot of wrapping fees.
Definitely is not the right way. So I would like to see in our junior colleges, in our polytechnics, financial literacy classes, maybe once a week, teaching young people why you should buy an insurance policy, how you should buy an insurance policy.
Yes.
What's the difference between life insurance and endowment?
Yes.
And then
so messed
learn
up
to calculate the cost. What is the cost? All right?
Differentiate between guaranteed and non-guaranteed.
I might be saying this and I will lose the votes of many insurance agents.
We vote for you. We support.
No, but I think financial literacy. So we have to teach our children how to do simple calculation. All right? It's a life skill. It's a life skill for their long-term financial security. It's not that insurance policies are not, they're good. But how do you go about choosing the right policy?
Exactly.
Yeah, lesser known.
And then how does our financial system encourage sufficient competition to bring the cost of investing down?
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, schools, if you guys ever need teachers.
Yeah, we're quite good.
We're always but must pay.
Must pay, but we are the best. Okay.
Yeah, but we agree. Financial literacy in schools should definitely be a thing.
Yes.
It wasn't during our time. Now it's
not.
still lacking. But
Yes.
it's something that has to change for the future of the younger generation.
Okay, maybe last question. Last question. We'll give you the floor. I mean, to share like how are you different from everyone else? What is your platform? What are you gonna champion specifically for you, and how are you different from everyone else?
There are 3 words which I can describe what I think are the essential qualities for the president. The first is competence. You need a certain level of competence. You saw how it took the Prime Minister 3 YouTube videos to explain. Now, that was an excellent exposition. communicating to the people of Singapore. So in other words, we need a certain level of competence for the job because there's a specific function, safeguarding the reserves, safeguarding the integrity. The second important quality is independence. I think the health of our governance system in Singapore would be better if the president is independent of politics. Better for the president not to have been affiliated with any political party, so that the president is then in a position to unify the people of Singapore, regardless of their political views or their political aspirations. So this second quality of independence. And then the third quality is integrity. You want to have a president who is known to be a person of good character. And that you can only tell from his life history. You cannot just put it on at the last minute. So I believe sincerely that I have those three qualities to make a good president. And I want to explain to the people of Singapore so that they know me, not just as a financial expert, but as a humane person who cares about Singapore and who particularly wants to help the younger generation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last question. So if in the event someone else wins this time round, will you run again the next round?
No.
Why not?
I think it will be too presumptuous for me. This is the best shot I have at the age of 75.
But you're in great health. So if
you
health
don't look like
permits,
75.
yeah, you don't look and act or
If
speak
somebody
like
tells
75.
me that I have the constitution of Dr. Mahathir,
Guy can live very long.
If health permits you,
I
would you still?
I mean, I would be so happy if at the next general election, at the next presidential elections, more good and capable younger Singaporeans step forward to serve their country.
Fair. Or our country.
Our country.
Yeah. Serve our
United
country. Yeah.
for our future. That is my slogan.
Thank you.
Thank
Love
you.
Love it. And if you have any questions, you can always approach Kok Song on their socials and any good stuff. Okay? So we will...
And if you like this episode, remember to like and share and
Yes.
spread the word about who he is, what he stands for, so that you and your peers can make a better informed voting
Yes,
decision. This
yes.
is not to say we advocate who or
Yeah,
that voting secret, but
yeah.
you need information in order to help you vote.
Yeah.
And that's us from Wise and Shine.
And Kok Song, the Dragon Slayer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice!